things you suffer in a childhood will guarantee show up in your adult, like guaranteed. It's 100%. It's not even theory anymore. It's like, it's just attachment law. The better informed we get about what these dynamics are and how they operate empowers us all. Yeah. And that's really what I want to get at. But in hindsight, I think back about that and I'm like, I was not sane. Like I was in a state of temporary insanity. Yeah. And why? All because why? And that was a question I asked myself for years. Every action that I remember in my times of like massive dysregulation are exactly the kind of thing you would see from a child that's been neglected, abandoned, abused. I've developed something here in the last couple of years that is changing lives. From all the studies I've done, spiritual and psychological and technical, like this is the most gold I've ever found. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, right? But I've gone out in the field and I've been testing it, and it's like, it is the success rate is astonishingly high. Yeah. Activating yourself on purpose to maximize the relearning window of where you take the traumatic memory and you basically reintegrate it into the conscious mind, conscious memory system. And then traumas go away. Yeah. And I'm like, that's a big claim. And I know that that's a big claim, but I've watched it happen. Like right. At this point,
I feel like we should talk
okay.
As though, we just met and I'm like super interested in like what you're teaching.
Well,
so you can like hit things like that'll land on a broad audience.
Well, that's cool, but that's not authentic.
Okay.
And I'm all about authenticity. And so, I'll just say, because I'm on camera, I will say this, that like one of my top values is authenticity, and I don't script anything. And I've noticed that like when I try to script things, stuff falls apart. And so I'm like, where are we? Where are you? Where are we at? Because I can flow with that in the sense that one of the things I noticed on my healing journey is that I was trying to do things. I was trying to do the things people are telling me to do. Okay. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's like I'm sitting here and they're like, oh, do self-love, take a bath, light a candle or whatever. And, meditate more, develop this kind of thought pattern or whatever. And there was all these things that it was like trying. And oddly enough, in that path, I ended up reading the Tao Te Ching. Okay. So I spent a whole year studying the Tao. And in that, one of the things the Tao talks about is it's just like Wu Wei, they call it, like being, non-being, or like I don't know, it doesn't really translate into English that well, but Wu Wei is this idea that it's like inaction with intent. It's not just like, I'm not just being lazy. It's that like, trying to translate the Tao is very difficult. One example is like, it talks about be like water, right? So Bruce Lee has this famous phrase. It's like, be like water. That's straight out of the Tao Te Ching, because he studied the Tao and then it changed his life philosophy, which then changed his fighting. But one of the things it says in the Tao is like, the ocean is the mother of all rivers, because all she does is sit at the lowest place and all water flows to her effortlessly. And the Tao is filled with these beautiful nuggets like that. And this idea that you say, the sage, which is an English translation, I'm not even sure what the original is. The sage is basically someone who's walking with the Tao. And someone who's walking with the Tao is just, I don't need to try. Right. Just be and let the things come to you. Yeah. And so I'm in the middle of this horrific divorce and then other things going on. And then I'm just like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to become an expert in the Tao, whatever, to get all that egotistic crap. And I'm living in Istanbul, and I basically spent all my time studying and trying to really just get into this hyper spiritualism. And you can do it. You can achieve that. Yeah. You can achieve such a profound degree of dissociation with hyper spiritual focus that it's like all your pain goes away, but it doesn't really go away. You're literally just dissociating and numbing from it, right? And that's one of the things I noticed around here, is that, it's a lot of younger people, which, of course that's fine. But when you develop a technique that's really good at numbing out the pain, yeah, the pain maybe goes away, but you literally lose the skills that you need to deal with the pain. You lose all that. And so I don't know, something changed along the way, and it started making sense to me that I'm just like, I started noticing that I was getting stronger in the face of the discomfort. And when I got stronger in the face of the discomfort, other discomforts became more manageable. And of course, then I remember all this like spiritual techniques I've learned and all these like contemplatives that I've studied over the years. I'm like, oh my God, this is what they were talking about the whole time. Is it just like, do what you need to do so you can stand right in the face of the storm and still be yourself and still be grounded. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm hearing you say it's more like an acceptance or a facing than like an aversion or spiritual bypassing.
Yeah. It's that's the tricky part about the Tao, is that people think of it as being acceptance, and it's not. It's very intentional. It's intentional acceptance, intentional tolerance, maybe. I don't know. But it's like it's not like, oh, I'm just going to sit back and like you're like, no, I'm literally going to like, with a great deal of inner intention and inner attention, I'm going to step towards it, directly into it, and then watch and then see what happens. Right. Yeah. So that's kind of how the Tao fits into like my philosophy on things. But as far as this goes, like there's all these podcasters out there, right? And of course I've listened to many, but I listened to the big ones. Sam Harris. I think I first started with Sam Harris, and then of course Joe Rogan eventually, and several others. What's that? Oh, Lex Friedman, and now of course now it's Huberman. Like I love Huberman, and it's like, oh, I want to be like that someday. You know, like I have a little kid being like, when I grow up, I want to be like Alexander Huberman, Andrew Huberman, and yeah. So it's like but I love this format. I love this thing of just sitting with someone and having a natural, organic conversation, and so. But in order to do, there's so many people out with podcasts now, and a lot of them are just talk about whatever is going on in life, fashion and dating and all that kind of stuff. But now I feel like I've actually found something. Like I've developed something here in the last couple of years that is changing lives. And now it's like, okay, how do we get the word out?
And when did the passion start?
Oh, the passion started.
When did you find like?
Okay, that's good. That's a good question. Now, passion has, like, how are we going to define passion? Like, there's the passion of like, I love this and I have it inside me, and it like I wake up in the morning and it's the first thing I think about, and I want to go chase it. Meaning, purpose, passion. There's that kind of passion, and then there's this other passion which is like, this hurts like hell. Get me away from it. How can I escape? Right? And then you have this tremendous motivation, this passionate motivation to escape it. That's where I started. That's where most people start. It's like, this hurts. This sucks. Like, how can I make this be different? What do I need to do? Right. And then it's like, oh, do I need to take plant medicine or psychedelics or sound healing or Reiki or blah, 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 yoga, aesthetic dance, whatever. Like, there's this whole gigantic list now in this kind of alternate modalities. And I tried almost all of those. I haven't done breath work yet. I don't really know why. I think it's just because I'm busy. But like breath work, cold plunges, oh man, I hate them. Never got serious about that one. But I've done all these other modalities, especially the psychedelic one. And then, but again, it's coming from this passion, this drive to be like, I want to get out. There's this misery. I feel pain. And it's so, it takes over. I don't know if you've ever been in that situation, but like in my journey, I have many examples of it. Just like it literally hijacks the entire system.
Yeah. Trust me. I'm with you.
Yeah. And you're like, and you're in it and you're like, it's miserable and I want to get out. But it's also like, I can't even imagine what a different life is like. at one point, oh yeah, some bad stuff happened to this girl I was dating, and it was pretty clear we were breaking up, and I freaked out. My nervous system went nuts, and I just said, I can't. It's like I literally couldn't sit still. And I said, I got to do something. So I just like threw shit in the car, got in the car, and I told my brother, I said, I'm going on a road trip. He's like, where are you going? And I'm like, south. That's all I know. And so I just got in the car and drove south, highly amped nervous system, turned randomly. It's in Oregon, so we ended up, you end up out in the nature quite a bit. Eventually found a campground, did some Google reading. I would drive for hours, then I would just stop and have to journal, and I would journal for like 3 hours while sitting there in the car. And, because there's just so much junk inside. And then I get this message from a friend of mine. It's like, hey, you want to go hike Mount South Sister, which is like the easiest hike or the easiest mountain summit probably anywhere. It's really just like, 4-hour hike going up, and then you're at the top of a mountain at 11,000 feet. And I was like, sure, anything. Like, it was literally anything. So I drive all the way back, meet him at the place, and I had to have been buzzing. I was just like, zzz. And he's just like, wow, you look pretty amped. And I was like, yeah, it's been a rough weekend. And it's like, let's go. And, put on my stuff. And he's watching me, and he's literally an outdoor, what do you call it? Anyway, he got his college degree in like outdoor sciences, safety, whatever. So he knows all the stuff. And I'm showing all the signs that this is a bad idea. But he's like, okay, I'm with him, and it's a warm day, and there's all these people. And so he made the call that we can still go. And we climbed up this mountain, and he's just like, when was the last time you peed? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, it's literally been more than a day. And then he's like, I think you're dehydrated. And it's like, how much do you sleep? And I'm like, oh, I slept 2 hours last night in a gas station. And like, it's just all this horrible things. And then by this point, we're halfway up the mountain, and he's just like, I'm not sure that I might rule this out. That I said, no, we can do it. So I talked him into it, and we eventually get to the top of the mountain. It was fine. But in hindsight, I think back about that, and I'm like, I was not sane. Like, I was in a state of temporary insanity. Yeah. And why? All because why? And that was a question I asked myself for years. Okay. Why? What happened that took me so far out of my mind that all these things happen? And it's not just a mind story. It's like it's a full-blown body systemic thing. And that's one of the problems I have with, problems, but I mean, it's one of the question marks I have around kind of the traditional therapy model that I did many, many times, and many of these other bits, that is that they come at this problem and they're like, oh, well, let's get you to a place where you feel better, and then we'll sign off and say you're better, and then away you go, which I did. And then, of course, it just comes back. Like, then I literally, okay, this is a fun one. I had one of these situations happen. It was about 2005 or 2006, maybe, probably. Same kind of thing. I became way overinvested in some girl that, in hindsight now, we were completely not aligned, but whatever. And so then she cuts it off, and I lose my shit and go wild, right? And so then I find a therapist. I started going to this therapist on a regular basis, and we're going through all this stuff, and there was these times I would just show up in the office, and I'm literally just like, I'm hyperventilating, and I'm buzzing, and it just, I can't think straight. And she's watching this, and she's just like, I recognize it's like I was up at an 11 and way more than she was prepared for. But we did these exercises to kind of bring me back to a state of calm and all that kind of stuff. And we were slowly making some progress, I guess. But then I went to this dance, and I met this pretty girl, and we talked a little bit, and then suddenly I feel much better. And I go to the thing, and I talk about how great it is, and she's just like, yeah, you should pursue that. Now, I did end up marrying that woman. I mean, we dated for like 6 or 7 years, and then we got married, and then we were married for 3, and then the divorce happened. But in hindsight, I realized just how short-sighted that was. It's like, sure, okay, maybe you do have connection, and maybe there can be a relationship there. But this idea that, like, because it feels good, you should go that way. Literally, from a therapist, like, you've been at this state of massive dysregulation over many, many things, and as soon as a pretty girl shows up and gives you attention, now you're fine. And it's like, and we're going to sign off that you're healed. And I'm like, wow. I mean, in some ways it makes sense, because what's the alternative? The alternative is to recognize that it's like, this is a major undertaking to reprogram all this stuff. And so when that marriage ended, I was again dysregulated. And then about a year later, I meet someone that just, fireworks and the whole thing again, probably more than any other. Okay. And then when that one ended, that's when it was the mountain trip and all this other complete chaos. And that's when I discovered attachment theory. Okay. I literally I don't know, she did a couple of crazy things, literally three, yes, I'm totally into you. And then no, get away from me. I never want to speak to you again. And then in the evening, it's this hey, you want to come over? Let's spend something, it was like this massive push-pull thing. Yeah. And then I was I just felt like I had this emotional whiplash. And I literally went to Google and said, who does these things? And I typed in a summary of the three things. And on the first page of Google, it was have you heard of adult attachment theory? And I'm like, no, I haven't. And then I'm like, but at that point, when you're so super dysregulated, you're anything that will make the pain go away, right? Which means any snake oil salesman, any spiritual guru that's got whatever, right? Anyone that is promising an answer for the pain, they have your money. And we can come back to that.
It reminds me of a fire burning, and
yeah,
let's just start throwing stuff on it.
Yes.
And then maybe it flares it up, or hopefully it,
yeah, right. Let's just push the couch over there. Oh my God, yeah. So I discovered adult attachment theory, and then I was just like, what is this all about? And, anxious, preoccupied, dismissive, avoidant, fearful, disorganized, blah, blah, blah. And started signing up for multiple programs. I found one teacher. Oh, I can afford that. Find another teacher. So I'm literally doing 2 or 3 different programs at a time. Yeah. And, it gives you something to focus on. So I'm doing these workbooks, and I'm watching these videos, and I'm journaling like mad. And I'm in this loop, in this mental loop. It's I'm healing myself. Right? It sounds just like Ubud. Yeah. And so that's the distraction. That's the numbing agent. But the thing that about adult attachment theory that really got me interested was that it started predicting things. And that was the first time I'd been in such close proximity to a psychological model that was so accurate. And it was it's really bizarre. There's a lot of psychological models that don't really, it's they start breaking down when you cross major cultural lines or age, whatever. But adult attachment theory, these experiments they've done, I don't know, I'm pretty sure they've been recreated in almost every culture on Earth. And, well, not all, but, all the major ones. And the findings keep being the same. And then so that's the childhood strange experiment stuff. And then there's this other bit that it's we've got, because attachment theory was 2 bits. There was a researcher that discovered the child bit, and they came up with the original attachment styles. And there was a different researcher that was noticing these themes in adult relationships. Okay. And then it was when they came together, they realized that there was these lines of connection. And so attachment theory is actually the child bit, adult attachment theory is the adult bit, and it's 2 different fields. But now we've got so much data that ties it all together. It's just it's all one big thing. And it's just yes, these things you suffer in a childhood will guaranteed show up in your adult, guaranteed. It's 100%. It's not even theory anymore. It's it's just attachment law. And so, if you can see a situation in a person's childhood, and you can predict literally how their adult relationship is going to go up in flames. And then you can watch an adult relationship that's going up in flames, and you can make very accurate predictions about what kind of things they experience as a child. And I have yet to experience a case where that's not true. Yeah. I have been in many, many cases where the person insists that it's not true. They're like, no, I had a great childhood and my parents loved me and blah, 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 that kind of stuff. And you're like, okay, maybe it's wrong. But then you keep poking around, and then eventually you find it. And then you're just like, yep, this is it. There's a straight line connection between the drama that's playing out in your adult life and what happened in your childhood. And it's 100%. Never seen anything deviate from that. And it, to the point, I mean, this is kind of part of my passion is I want this to be so commonplace that people just have that in their head. They're like, it's like we know on a isosceles triangle and the hypotenuse a squared, b squared, that's just stuff that everyone learns in school. I want the same thing to happen with attachment theory. To just be like, you see someone freaking out and you're like, this is not what it's about. That's all the time. Someone's having a major emotional reaction and you're like, it is not about this. Everyone wants to believe it is, and it's really good at selling products. But like when you say it's not about this, it's about, this is a reflection. This is like echoes in this gigantic cave that you're hearing the echo now related to the mocha frappuccino being wrong or someone pronouncing my name or using the wrong pronoun or whatever, right? There's this echo that's coming out, but you go into the cave deep enough and you find out where the source of it's coming from. And you're like, it has nothing to do with the mocha frappuccino. It has to do with something else. Always. And then you just need you need someone that's done a little bit of homework. Okay, maybe a lot, but someone that's studied the concepts well enough that it's like, there's kind of a special mindset you get into where you can start putting the pieces together, and it just becomes clear as a bell. And then for me, I don't know, I guess I'm good at it. I seem to be good at it, but it's like, one of the reasons I'm good at it is because I misdiagnosed myself. Is that like, I'm just like, oh, I'm anxious, preoccupied. And then it's just like, oh, and then I'm dating a dismissive avoidant. So I go learn everything about her attachment style. And then someone's like, well, you should learn about yourself. And I'm like, okay, well, then I go learn everything about mine. And then I'm like, well, actually, I'm neither of these. I'm the one in the middle, which is fearful avoidant. And so then I became an expert on that one. And then I'm like, okay, well, now I've got all three in my head and all the different connections and stuff. And then I start finding these other researchers. And then I realized I'm like, oh, all of this is just weird layers of abstraction. There's stuff going on underneath that is the really interesting bits. And so now I don't even use the labels anymore because it's just like, who cares? Who cares if you're anxious or, I mean, yeah, it's like if you get assessed as anxious, that is a picture and a label, and that's going to tell us that we're going to be able to predict some things about your reactions and but the real juicy bits are underneath that. It's like, why are you anxious? Right? Why are you avoidant? What are you avoiding? What's the scary bit? What are you so afraid of? And then you realize that across the board, everyone that's assessed with a insecure attachment style, they're all avoidant. They're all terrified. They are all reacting to fear. Fear of what? Right? And that was another, and so that was a bit too, is that I'm like, I mean, Thais Gibson I kind of consider her my teacher. She does a personal development school. I love and adore her and I respect her greatly. But it's like, I feel like she's still at this, like the intro level, which is good. I mean, because intro level's gotten, she's got a booming business and tremendous content. I mean, I don't want to say anything. I mean, really, I do. I adore her. But it's like, and this might just be the way that different brains work, but the way that my brain works, and I come from a technical background, is I'm just like, what is driving this? And I'm like, well, what's driving it is fear. And it's like, well, what are you afraid of? And then that just starts becoming really clear. It's just like, I'm afraid of disconnection. I'm afraid of being alone. I'm afraid of someone not liking me. I'm afraid of being bad. I'm afraid of being unlovable. There's a big list. And again, coming from Thais Gibson, she has this like quadrant thing of like 20 different core wounds. 100%. These core wounds are it. But it's like how you kind of knit that into the story. And if I'm too far, at least I found that if I'm too far away, if I'm too far into the cognitive, like the thinking about it and filling out worksheets and using language and all that kind of stuff, it's this perfect avoidant mechanism where I don't actually have to deal with any of the emotions, right? So for me, that's kind of how I got. I don't know. I'm meandering a little bit, but I mean, if it makes sense to you, then it's
no. This is good because there's a book called The Human Magnet Syndrome by Ross Rosenberg.
Yeah.
Heard of that?
Yeah.
I read that, and it basically was an intro into narcissistic behavior and the anxious avoidant dynamic.
Yeah.
And it was a good book, but at the end of it, I was like, okay,
Now what?
Now what do I do about it?
Yeah.
And he even said like, my next book is gonna be how to address it, and it
Okay.
never came out. Well,
Yeah.
maybe it's out now, but I
Yeah,
checked
yeah.
a few months ago, and it's
Yeah, he's the guy that what is it? Yeah, codependence. So like
Yeah.
when I was splitting up with my ex-wife, someone gave us this book called Codependent No More. And that was the first time
Betty
yeah, I don't know the name.
Medley or something.
Yeah. That one should probably go on my book list.
Yeah, I've read some of that,
Yeah.
or all of that.
Yeah, she's got two of them. So I basically went through the whole first one with my wife, my ex-wife, and then we were sitting there by the river and just being like, yeah, this is me, and oh yeah, that's me too, and all that kind of stuff. But it's same kind of thing. It's like it doesn't really give you a clear definition of what codependence is, and it doesn't really give you a clear idea of what to do about it. And then I went on to read No More Mr. Nice Guy by Robert Glover, and that was a life changer. That book's in like top 3 for me, in like most influential in my life. And it's basically talking about codependence also. And so, and then The Way of the Superior Man, and a few others. It's like, it was weird because it's like the definition of codependence is this weird kind of amorphous thing, and say like, well, I'm codependent, and people are like, what does that mean? And you're like, oh crap, and how do I describe this? And but Rosenberg, he's the guy that was trying to push really hard, that he said he wanted to rename it. He says codependence is not a really accurate description, and people like see the words and they get an idea in their head and that idea is not accurate. So his push was that he wanted to rename it self-love deficiency syndrome. Yeah, SLDD, I think. Yeah, or SLDS. Yeah, and it's like that was actually very helpful for me to say like, oh, okay. Well, so it's not so much that I'm codependent. I mean, I am, but like this, I have a deficiency of self-love. Right. Great. Now what? Like it gets me back to the same place. I'm like, what even is self-love? And I watched all these videos with them and read books and all this other stuff. And I still was just like, I still don't know how to do it. I don't, it's like someone who swims naturally talking to someone who can't swim at all. It's like you're in this different world. And trying to communicate things from your perspective just lands on deaf ears. I agree. And so I talked to all these people that obviously have self-love because of the way they're living their life and they're happy and joyful and all that kind of stuff. It's like, how do I get there? What do I do? Someone tell me. And then I tried all these different things. And I don't know, maybe some of them weren't, over time, but for the most part, I feel like they were ineffective. Yeah. And so, again, coming from a technical background, programming specifically, when you're programming, you need very specific grammar, very specific punctuation, everything else. Like it's just hyper specific. And so it's very literal. Yeah. And that kind of meticulous attention has definitely come over into my study of psychology, because I'm just like, if you can't define it in meticulous detail, then there's going to be misinterpretations. Yeah. And then that is not helping. Yeah. Right? So, yeah, talking to a professional therapist and they say, oh, well, you just need more self-love in your life. And I'm like, what does that mean? And there's like, well, have you tried this? And have you tried that? And you realize they're doing this like kind of shotgun approach. It's like, oh, try a little bit of this, try a little bit of that, treat yourself to a nice meal, take yourself on a date, and they're basically suggesting all these things, hoping that one of them will stick. It's like throwing pasta at the wall. Right. And I'm just like, well, if you can't give me specific instructions, then what's going on? Right. Yeah. And then of course I start helping people and they ask me the same question. And I'm like, oh, right. I hear you. It's like I'm starting to feel it, but how do I get from where you are to where I am? Right. And then so I started going back into my own notes and my own journals and looking at this process. And then I discovered the Daniel Brown stuff, which is the 5 pillars of attachment, among other things in that book. But eventually it started becoming clear. Yeah. And I was just like, okay, maybe there's other pathways to self-love, but this is one that I know that I can codify. And that is like, first you have to recognize that the conscious and subconscious minds are different things. And they have different strengths, different weaknesses, and different motives. And that's why I call my system the 2-mind method. So you got to start there. That's why it's in the name. And then once you realize that the subconscious is something that's different than me, I'm only in the conscious mind. My concept of I is only in the conscious mind. As soon as I recognize that the subconscious / inner child, they're the same thing. As soon as I recognize that that is a different thing, it's a different personality. He has different strengths, different weaknesses, different fears. Well, not so much different fears, because when he fears it, I know it. I pay the price. But, you know, it's as soon as I see that, then I'm just like, oh, this is where all my emotions come from. And if all my emotions are coming from this inner child, then I started imagining this idea that like he's sitting back there behind the curtain with this like emotional control panel. And I'm like, okay, if he's control of all emotions, then what do I need to do to get him to start pushing the happy buttons instead of the sad buttons? Right? And then it's like, and then all these people are talking about connecting with the inner child, reparenting, subconscious alignment, all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, oh, that's it. So my system really does stand upon the shoulders of many giants. I mean, it's like there's only a couple things that are like me and my authoring. Most of it is I've gleaned from other wonderful people. But this is something that like, it's kind of a merging of many ideas, but it gets to this point where you say, there is an entity that lives inside me. We can call it my inner child. And that entity is sad because that entity is sitting alone, has the emotional maturity. It is the state of our mental and emotional abilities when we're 4 or 5 years old. Yeah. And now I've gone on with my life and I've chased dreams and I've sacrificed and when emotions come up that aren't pleasant, I squish those down and I basically abandon and neglect this 4 or 5 year old child that lives inside me. Yeah. And then what happens if you have a 4 or 5 year old child that is abandoned and neglected? They get very emotional. They become very dysregulated. They feel very unsafe. They act out a lot. You know, they get strategic in the sense that they will hide and make themselves small long enough until they get their chance. And when they get their chance, they will like jump out, right? And do everything, you know, steal the cookies, run away from home, drive the car into the ditch, whatever, right? This is the kind of behavior. And when I started looking at it through that lens, I was just like, this is so consistent. Like every action that I remember in my times of like massive dysregulation are exactly the kind of thing you would see from a child that's been neglected, abandoned, abused. Right. Yeah. And I was like, oh, and then, but I was still in that mindset that it's like, you're a single person, I'm a single person. All these people walking around on earth, that's one person. John is one John, right? Or whatever. And then that was really where things really started taking off for me. And this model, this method that I teach, is recognizing that it's like, they're not just one person. There's 2 people in there at least. And this kind of starts tapping into IFS, which is internal family systems. There's a little bit of alignment there. But this idea that like, if he's 2 people, which one's driving? And then I just think about myself and every person I've ever worked with or talked with. And I'm just like, there are times when the calm, rational, forward-thinking, considerate person is driving. And then there's times when the child's driving. Right. And the child is terrified and acting out and very, very self-absorbed. Make sense? Yeah. And so you're like, okay, well, if I have a 5-year-old that can push a button and just hijack my whole system. And then I basically, the part that's me, just who knows, like is squashed or goes away or whatever, which again lines up with contemplative ancient philosophy. Yeah. Pushes the hijack button, pushes me out of the bus, or squishes me in the back. Then it's like, okay, now I have this 5-year-old that's driving this body. And he's very short-sighted, focused on immediate pleasures and needs, not a lot of forward thinking, and it's like, do not care about anybody else unless they're going to give me something that I need. Right? It's like, I don't care about you unless you're going to offer me something, connection, love, sex, blah, 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 whatever, right? Unless you're going to give me some chocolate, give me a cookie, F off. Yeah. Well, how narcissistic does that sound? Right. Very. Yeah. And that started I mean, I'd been seeing all this stuff on narcissism on the internet and everything else. And there's a period of time when someone was, listening to the behaviors of my ex-wife, and it's like, oh, she was a covert narcissist. And I mean, I sunk into that for a while, not helpful at all. But then when I started coming to this model that it's like we got the adult mind and the child mind, I'm just like, well, that's all that's going on. I mean, all these people that are being labeled narcissists and horrible exes or whatever, it's like they're just in a state of self-oriented survival.
Right.
And when I'm in a state of self-oriented survival, I don't care about you.
Right.
I don't care about anybody.
Yeah.
And I will say and do whatever I need to do to get my immediate survival needs met.
Right.
And there we go. Now we've got an answer that is compassionate
Yeah.
and like psychologically sound and neurologically sound,
Yeah.
so that can explain this whole thing. But where that fails the social media test, right? It's that model doesn't sell views. It doesn't sell impressions, right? So we have this situation where like, this is actually a better way to look at the situation, is that when I've got an ex that was acting in some way that seems very selfish and abusive or whatever, and I can shift that around and say, that is a 5-year-old child that's freaking terrified
Yeah.
and just acting out of survival needs. And it's maladaptive for sure. And sure, it can be maladaptive, it can be abusive. I mean, we can put all these labels on it, but when you go into that cave and you go back to the back of the cave, you realize what's going on here is that his 5-year-old child is terrified.
Yeah.
Then I can be like, oh, I can have compassion for that person, and I can also be boundaried at the same time. I can be like, I see that you're a 5-year-old child. I see that your emotional regulation skills are not great. I can see that you're acting out of self-interest. I don't want to be around this,
Yeah.
right? And then I can walk away.
Yeah.
But it sells so many more views and impressions and likes and subscribe buttons and everything else when it's like, when that person's a bad guy,
Yeah.
that person's the evil one and I'm the victim.
Yeah.
It almost gives you a free pass on feeling victimhood.
Yep, it is.
They're narcissistic.
Yep.
It's the evidence is there. Now I can feel like I did nothing wrong. I didn't
Yeah.
contribute this. I'm just the victim.
Yeah. Yeah, the victim, I mean, I say it often in my classes and stuff, is that the victim card is incredibly seductive.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know any other way to describe that. Is that, I mean, I've played it a million times. I've been around others that played a million times. It doesn't help. Like, the victim card never helps, but it's super seductive.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I think it's seductive because it gives us a place to hide.
Yeah.
I don't have to be vulnerable. I don't have to touch my feelings. I don't have to share. I don't have to admit accountability. Like, there's all these things I can just avoid and be like, I can just sit here and be self-righteous and indignant and pissy. And then I get my boyfriends or girlfriends to come, validate me and how horrible that person was. And it's just like, oh, and then now I feel great because now I feel like there's connection and support and I'm loved. And, I don't know if you've ever had it, but I've had people where it's like you're reaching the tail end of the relationship and they will literally go back and rewrite the entire relationship. I mean, it usually only works for short-term ones, but like they will literally go back and rewrite the cause and effect sequence of almost every major interaction that you've had so that they can weave this story where it's like you've been an evil bad guy the entire time. And I was innocent. I just didn't know any better. I'm naive or whatever, right? And I've seen this happen. Both men and women do it. I've seen it. And you're just like, and they'll go back in time and they're like, oh, there was this time. And it's like, I should have watched the signs. It's like, if I'd only watched the signs, I could have avoided all this pain.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, sorry. I want to find a nicer way to say that, but I'm like, no, it's just no. It's just a straight up no. That is a trick of the brain that's trying to get me to the point where I don't have to face any discomfort.
Yeah.
And then that happens and I'm watching this whole dynamic and I'm like, wait a second. I keep on coming back around to this thing that like, look at all the hoops we'll jump through to avoid discomfort.
Right.
I've done it a million times. I used to describe myself as an addictive personality, right? Or a personality with addictive propensities, I guess, whatever. there was, I don't know, that was 10 or 15 years ago when that was going around. Everyone was talking about that. It's like, oh, do you have addictive behaviors or whatever? I'm like, hell yeah. Like, you know, sugar, video games, blah, 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 whatever, shopping. We were just talking about shopping on Amazon or the Tokopedia, whatever, all this stuff, all these things are, you know, and it happened, it's an ongoing challenge to just be like, oh, if I just, there's this little dopamine hit when you're shopping and you find the one that's just right and you hit the like button and then you're just like, oh, now I just got to wait for it. And it shows up like Christmas. And, yeah. So the things that we do to avoid discomfort absolutely slow us down.
Yeah.
I was talking to someone yesterday about it. Trying to remember if that was a friend or a client, because that changes what I can say. I'll just make it really abstract. But it's the idea that, well, let me think about that. If I'm feeling all this discomfort about a relationship or any situation, really, is that if my goal, my metric for the way that I evaluate I'm better or I'm feeling good, or is that I'm feeling good. Like if we say this is done now and I'm in a better place because I feel good, well, then what? And then, so what happens is you have someone and they're like totally codependently meshed with a romantic partner. Okay. And then that relationship blows up or melts down or whatever, right? And then they're in this, now I don't have a base, right? They're super anxious. And the anxious attachment system will prioritize connection over everything. And then there's like, I'm floundering. It's like, I don't have my person. I need a person, right? And then they seek out therapy and they go to the gym and they, do all the healing ceremonies and everything else, right? Because their inner sense of anxiety is just turned up to 11 like mine was. And then they end up talking to me. And then I guide them through all this stuff and they're definitely getting better. And each time I see them, they're marginally better. Well, then guess what? The new person shows up, just like with me, the girl shows up and the therapist says, oh, go with that. Yeah. New person shows up. Oh, suddenly I feel better. It's like, oh, I don't need therapy anymore. Stop signing up, stop doing the work, all this other kinds of things, right? That person has evaluated their sense of well-being based upon, do I feel good? Right. So you feel good. Well, now that relationship plays out for 2 months, 2 years, whatever. And then that one blows up and now you're single again. Right. And the anxiety goes back up and now you see this loop that we get stuck in. Yeah. I mean, I was stuck in that loop forever. It's like, you cannot evaluate well-being based upon feeling good. Because if that's true, then I can just like do some heroin or coke or MDMA is an awesome one, right? It's just like you take your substance of choice until you numb out entirely and you're just like, oh, I feel good, I'm healed. Right. Yeah. So we can't. I'm just gonna say we can't do that. It's like it does not seem to be fruitful. Yeah. So, well, if we can't evaluate based upon feeling good, then how do we evaluate it? And it's like this is where self-delusion comes in. Okay. It's like talk about the enemies of healing are shame, blame, numbing, and self-delusion. Okay. These are the enemies of the healing process because these 4 things arrest the process. Yeah. If I get wrapped up in shaming myself, I stop acting, I stop moving, I stop developing, I stop facing challenges because I'm hiding all the time. Yeah. Right? And if I'm actively shaming somebody else, you're so horrible, he's so horrible, whatever, now I'm hiding behind the victim card and I don't have to face anything. So now shame blocks me on both accounts. Okay. Blame is the same way. Right? So shame is usually self-oriented, blame is the other oriented, right? But they're both victim-oriented. Yeah. And then numbing is what we've been talking about, that you avoid feeling anything difficult. Yeah. And then self-delusion, there's the tricky one. Yeah. I don't hear many people talk about that one. No. Yeah. It's like literally, it's like, what am I doing right now? Why did I just do the thing that I did? And I'm pretty introspective. I would say I've spent a lot of time doing self-analysis and trying to develop my skills at introspection.
Yeah.
And I would say I'm still don't know.
Right.
Like if I take an action and I stop for a second, I say, why did I do that? I'm like, oh, I could probably think of 6 different reasons. One of them is cool. The other 5 are probably bullshit, right? And I'm like, okay, now which one is it? And I'm like, yeah, and that's where we kind of need external help.
Yeah.
We need like,
Why do you think it's so hard? Is it the ego not wanting to feel shame, so we make up, stories that aren't accurate?
yeah,
Why is the self-delusion such a tricky one to navigate?
that's a good one. Good question.
It's like it's like the survival instinct.
It is. Yeah. Well, okay. So I don't have a slide for this in my class anymore. I used to. There's this stuff by Dr. Jim Hopper, and I am paraphrasing massively one of his lectures, because he said something there that was specifically about what he was talking about, but I think it extends to a greater domain. And that is, I believe that there's 3 traits that are common for all traumatic experiences. So all trauma, we haven't talked about trauma yet, but I have a very specific definition of trauma, but all traumatic events have 3 things in common. And one of them is I do not feel safe. I am not safe. The second one is I am being objectified, which is kind of the opposite of seen and heard. It's this idea that like the uniqueness that is me does not matter. I am being used. I am being taken advantage of. I am being consumed,
Yeah.
right? So it's the opposite of attunement. The opposite of seen and heard is I am being objectified. I am just an object for this thing or situation,
Yeah.
which sometimes could be ourself, which is tragic. The third one is what he describes perception of inescapability, which is kind of like I'm trapped, but it's a little bit more nuanced.
Yeah.
Perception of inescapability is this idea that like you don't believe you can get out. Maybe you can.
Yeah.
Maybe all the evidence says you could just, horrible things are happening. I can just walk out that door and I'm free of it. But there's this perception that you have inside that even if I walk out that door, it's going to follow me.
Right.
Even if I walk out that door, I will not get away from it.
Yeah.
And so there's this thing that's like the perception of inescapability
Okay.
crushes us. So coming back to your question about what is the deal with self-delusion, and I think it is related to these 3 things, is that if I'm in a situation where I feel objectified or that I'm trapped or that I'm unsafe, the way the brain works, especially the subconscious, is that there's all these lines of association. And if you have all these things, like every time I eat pizza, I've got an association with that chewy crust bread thing, right? And now every time I think about pizza, that chewy crust bread thing is now closer to the surface. My felt experience of it is now closer to the surface because I've got real strong lines of association,
Yeah.
right? And if I think about the chewy crust bread thing, all my memories of pizza will come closer to the surface, right? That's a silly example, but it paints the picture.
Yeah.
Is that if you have something that is in common with all of these traumatic experiences, anytime you feel that sensation, I'm unsafe, all the traumatic experiences move closer to the surface because they're basically being primed for ready recall,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Now, if I have something where I feel unsafe and I'm being objectified and I can't escape, guess what? I'm going to have all of my traumatic experiences move very, very close to the surface, and all of their emotional payloads are going to be sitting there leaking out into my system.
Yeah.
And I'm going to feel very, very anxious because what my system is saying, this sucks. We've got a million associations about how bad this can be. And look, they're all close to the surface. It's like you just jumped into shark-infested waters,
Right. Yeah.
right? And so, okay, how does that link back to what you're saying? Self-delusion is a powerful way to avoid all that, right? If I can just make up a new story and make me the hero, I no longer feel trapped. I no longer have the perception of inescapability.
Yeah.
If I make this all my choice, I no longer feel objectified, which is super tragic because in doing that, you literally objectify yourself. The conscious mind objectifies the subconscious. You go to your inner child and you say, no, stop feeling that. I'm going to paint this new picture up here about what's really going on. And your emotions are bullshit because they don't line up with my view of God or Allah or crystal healing or frequencies or whatever, right? And so we do this, we play this game where we create a construct in the conscious mind to nullify or push away all these difficult, challenging emotions that are coming up from underneath. And then it's just like, and then what happens? And then you end up, that inner child ends up being more traumatized.
Yeah. It's a manipulation
Totally.
of the inner child. Yeah.
It's a manipulation game you play. Why? Why do we do it? To avoid feeling uncomfortable feelings. And another thing I've said in classes that I feel like it's coming up now, so I feel like I should say it, is that one of the grand mistakes that we make as humans, in my opinion, is that we have this association that if it feels bad, it is bad. And if it feels good, it is good. And that is totally not like if I put it, it's so wild because I put it that clearly and people are like, hell no. But yet if no one's like be sitting here saying it, they will go about their business doing it all the time. Yeah. There's like, that coffee shop is a good coffee shop. Why? It's because I go in there and I feel good. Right. It's like, why do you feel good? It's like, oh, because I sit down and I consume this thing that I enjoy. And it's got sugar and all these stimulants and blah, blah, blah. You know, that's a simple example, right? But then you got the thing where it's like you've got a person that you're interacting with and I have bad feelings around that person and it's like they are a bad person. And it's like, no. Now I can already hear the voices, oh my God, I'm going to get pilloried on the internet. I can already hear the people that are saying, it's like, no, sometimes you got a gut instinct around someone and you see these, and it's like, yeah, that can happen. Yeah. It's like gut instinct is just the subconscious looking at massive amounts of data and making associations with prior unsafe events, threatening events. It's a threat scanner. So yeah, that can happen. You can see all these things about a person and it can activate these degrees of unsafety and threat and whatever. Sometimes it's accurate, sometimes it's not. So it's like, yes, if you have nothing else to go on and you don't want to do any introspection, go with it. Yeah. Go with that gut instinct and run away, shut them down, whatever. But don't for a second believe that you're right. Because chances are you're not. Okay. Right? Yeah. And then we say, okay, what about the victims of all these abusers? And well, that's a whole story, but like, I mean, I can totally go down that rabbit hole because there's a big thing about it. I'm all about bringing people to a place of power, okay, which is weird. I did not set out that way, but I realized as I do this work but it's like, I want to help people get to a place where they have maximum agency over their own lives. And the way you do that is by taking accountability for what you've done thus far. Right. I mean, not so much accountability, like, I feel like what I just said there will activate a lot of shame wounds. That's not it. It's not you did something wrong. It's understand the dynamics at play. Yeah. There's no shame here. Yeah. There's no blame. I don't believe in shaming anybody. Yeah. But getting to the point where you say, yes, I did choose that person. Right. And I chose that person every single day. Right. And here it is. We're 3 years in. And it's like, I don't feel like I dread to go home, or I dread when my partner walks in, or like, oh, we're going to start another fight or whatever, right? If I find myself in that situation, which I found myself many times, okay, like, what happens? We play the victim card. We say, oh, like my partner can't be this, or why can't they be that? Or like, oh, they're so difficult to deal with. And it's like, oh, blah, blah, the old ball and chain, right? We've heard all this. I've said all those things, right? We play the victim card because we're in a situation we don't like. And then we say, I'm the victim here because they are doing something or not doing something else. He's like, oh, he doesn't love me the way that I want him to, or he just comes in and he's emotionally distant, and then he wants me to be affectionate with him, and then he wanders off and goes back to work. Or, I mean, I'm just thinking about a million different examples of this I've seen. Yeah. And it's like, that doesn't help anything. The thing that helps, the thing that really gets us into escape velocity where we can start escaping these loops is when you say, oh my God, I literally wake up every morning and I choose this person.
Yeah.
Why? Why do I choose this person every single day? Like, oh, we've got kids together. So lots of people have kids and they're separate. Oh, we've got all our finances invested. So lots of people do that too. I mean, anything you can, unless they're literally physically restraining you, like, which I hope that never happens to anybody, but like, unless they're physically restraining you, why? You can ask that question. And I had to ask myself that question, and it was very, very difficult. Because when that happens, I start asking that question and I start getting close to the answers. Guess what? I wake up with a donut in my hand. Yeah, that's my story about numbing. Is that it's 2018. I was going through a difficult time, and I'm like trying to break my sugar habit. I'm like driving to work. I'm like, today's gonna be the day. I'm not gonna have any sugar today. It's great. I've done this before. I got the power. Rah rah rah. And then like 20 minutes later, I wake up in a donut shop with a donut in my hand, and it's got a bite out of it, and I'm just like, what the hell happened? Yeah. Like literally, I mean, it was 15 minutes ago I made this resolution, and now here I am, and I'm trying to think back between like, I'm like, okay, I vaguely remember the roads I was driving on, and I kind of remember taking that left turn. At what point did I turn into the driving? And I'm like, and I can remember it, but it's hazy. That's a clear sign of a trauma response. And so what I'm saying, where was I? But basically, yeah, it's like I push myself into the situation, and then I wake up with a donut in my hand, and that means that my system got triggered. My little kid hit the hijack button. He put my conscious mind to sleep, and then he drove me towards something that's going to regulate, drove me towards one of my numbing agents. And then you wait, and then once he's satiated, then he'll release take his finger off the hijack button, and then I wake up and I'm just like, what's going on?
Now, you were saying you had to ask yourself, why do I choose this person every day?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thank you.
And then, yeah.
Yeah, so I asked myself, why do I choose this person every day? And I'm digging into that, and then I wake up with a donut. Yeah. And that's just like, oh, like whatever's in there, the reason that's in there does not want to be found. Right. And that's what I found in my healing journey. And that's the part that like the pop psychologists and the books and the therapists and everything else were not helping me, is that like there's things inside that are very, very true that do not want to be seen. Yeah. And that's the part where I said, oh, I need to build better tools that help me get to that place. Yeah. And I believe that that's actually what psychedelics and MDMA are both pretty good at, is that they help us kind of go to the place where we don't want to go. Yeah. And but it's a temporary thing. Like, how much more powerful is if I can do it in real time.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
It seems like it's difficult to do on your own.
It
seems like getting help with someone
Yeah.
is way more effective and efficient.
Yes. Effective and efficient, yes, but it also requires vulnerability and requires strength, right? And so it's like, sure, I'm making some of my living by helping people do this, and I think I'm good at it, and the feedback has been outstandingly positive, right? But it's like, I don't want to sit here and be a salesman and say like, oh yeah, come sign up for my blah, blah, blah. Yeah. It's just, but I do want to say that if you choose that path, it is very difficult. Yeah. It's very, very difficult to catch yourself in self-delusion. And I don't think you're at the class. Talked about this a few weeks ago, and I was just like, at the beginning stages, if you're new, stepping into this realization and adopting kind of the two-mind model, then it's like, don't try to do it on your own at the front end. Yeah, I mean, you can. It's just, it'll be way heavy lift. Like, but it also doesn't have to be a professional. It doesn't have to be me. It just needs to be someone that you trust well enough that, and they know you well enough that they can call you out on your bullshit. Right. And then watch what you do, because you will probably, that relationship will probably be strained. You'll probably tell them to F off. And, even though this person's literally been your bestie your whole life, if you invite them into a place of being your accountability partner and say, I want you to stand here and call me out on my shit. Yeah. And then they do, you're going to be like, F that guy. Yeah. And so that is also difficult, right? So I don't want to say that, but it's just this, in that way, it does kind of suggest that getting a professional where it's literally their job, you're paying them for it, and you don't have any other outside connection with them, does seem to be beneficial for that. It seems to solve that issue better. But later on, like, again, I want people to be empowered. And so one of the things I do with my system is you can think of it as like, it's like turning therapy inside out in a way. I don't know if that makes sense, but the 2 Mind model, this way that I've developed it's therapy is a lot about being receptive. And it's like, I'm going to create a safe space and you're going to talk, and then I'm going to ask you questions, and I want you to come to your own realizations and all that kind of stuff. And so getting you to the point where you overcome some deep down core belief that's very challenging can take a very, very long time. And then people are not satisfied with that amount of time that it takes. And so then they start leaning on alternate modalities. And then that's where all the snake oil salesmen and faux shamans and everything else show up. And they say, oh, we've got this thing that's going to remove all the trauma in your body and blah, 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 right? And some of that stuff does have merit, in my opinion. Some of the modalities I actually align with, but it's the people practicing them and the way that they approach it and how much the money and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, whatever. But in the system that I'm working on, it's not so passive. It's that, like, I believe that the way the human brain works is codifiable.
Okay.
We can, not all of it, right? Not all of it.
Yeah.
But like in this bit, what trauma is, how it's stored in the body, how your body reacts to it, how the subconscious and conscious minds work in concert, the role of the attachment system, the 5 pillars of attachment, Daniel Brown stuff, how that wraps into all this. Those 3 things, you put them together and you have a very clear codified system that will predict how you're going to react in certain situations and which situations can trigger you. And I'm like, okay, that's a big claim, Kirby.
Yeah.
You know, this is me 2 years ago or whatever. And I'm like, that's a big claim. If that's true, then people way smarter than me should have discovered this by now.
Right.
So I started off with imposter syndrome. Just being like, there's no way that I've found something that other people haven't found. So I go looking, and I'm literally looking for researchers, clinical psychologists, all that kind of stuff. But what I found was I found some new heroes that I adore, but they're still wrapped up in this old way of thinking. Now, I don't want to be like, oh, I've got the new answer and I'm the savior and blah, blah. That's bullshit. But I do want to say that, like, there's a certain benefit you get, and we know this all throughout human history. There's a certain benefit when you have someone from a completely different discipline that steps into yours without all the backlog. And I think that's true in this case. It's like I came at it from a developer, technologist kind of point of view, and I just said, no, I like, someone gives me an answer, I'm like, that's not good enough. I need more. And then I'll become like obsessively focused on one aspect, and I'm like, I cannot do anything with this until I get more specific on it. And I hunt and whatever, and I eventually find a researcher that gives me the magic key, and I'm just like, that's it. That's the thing that links these 2 together. And now we have a system that has a very strong link between it. And then that just kept going and rolling and rolling. And then it was the point that actually gained momentum, that new information I find actually links in with the system quicker and faster and more detailed. And it still happens to this day. I mean, just last week I was looking at the interactions between adrenaline and neuroplasticity, and then the learning model. I mean, that's a whole thing that is like, when adrenaline, which is one of the stress hormones that's released when we're triggered, right? So we get triggered and we have these spikes of cortisol and adrenaline, and adrenaline does stuff in the brain that basically increases your chances of neuroplasticity, basically learning, right? And so now, wow, what does that say? That says that during a point of big triggers, your brain has a chance to learn more. Of course it does, because it's literally in the face of a life-threatening event. So it's like, I want to shut down all this other 5th century poetry crap and math and sciences and politics and
Yeah.
nationality. Like, turn off all that stuff. What we need right now is we need to maximize our ability. Our meaning the conscious and subconscious. I want to maximize our ability to take in information so we can learn as good as possible. Learn as much as possible. To gather as much information as possible, to make preliminary judgments that will maximize our chance of survival in this moment. And then we sleep. And in sleeping, the stuff we learned in that moment is transitioned into long-term storage. And that's when it becomes a traumatic memory. And so the whole thing fits together. And it's like, I've already been going with this idea about the stress hormones and the triggers and the trauma memories and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, just 2 or 3 weeks ago, Andrew Huberman, again, it's this side thing where they're talking about adrenaline and neuroplasticity. And I'm like, and then I go down this rabbit hole on that. And I'm like, it all fits.
Yeah.
Okay. So getting off topic, how does the 2 My method turn therapy inside out? It turns it inside out by saying, I am going to sit here and hold space for you because that's very important, right? There's 5 pillars of attachment teaches us about that. I'm going to do that to the maximum of my ability. But I believe I know how it works. This method, this system, gives us a code, a methodical step-by-step about what's going on inside the system. And my job is to impart that knowledge into you so that you become a practitioner of seeing it the same way that I do. And when you can see it the same way that I do, you don't need me anymore.
Yeah.
And so the 2 My method is not like I'm going to hold space for you to kind of vomit out all your stuff and then we're going to see kind of how it evolves. It's like, no, I am actively trying to teach you as quickly as possible this system so that you can then slow down your reaction time, look at yourself and say, does this check out?
Yeah.
And then as you realize that the system does accurately represent and predict your behaviors and your emotional reactions, then you feel powerful.
Yes.
You say, I have understanding, I have awareness, I have agency, and you're like, oh my God, these things don't work the way I thought they did. All the stuff I've been learning all this time is like not accurate. This is better, right? And then you start leaning onto that, and then you use those tools to basically begin dissecting your own traumas, integrating them, activating yourself on purpose to maximize the relearning window of where you take the traumatic memory and you basically reintegrate it into the conscious mind, conscious memory system. And then traumas go away.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's a big claim. And I know that that's a big claim, but I've watched it happen. Like at this point, I've only been doing this like super actively about 1.5 years and a little bit before that. But I mean, it's like I've seen people with profoundly traumatic childhoods have a level 11 triggering event, just like me in the mountain.
Yeah.
Like they are in a state of insanity.
Yeah.
They are not rational. They're not here. There's been times the person doesn't even recognize me. It's like when that click happens and the stress hormones go all high, they're looking, it's like, it's wild. They're now looking at me through these eyes where they do not have recognition.
Wow.
That part of their brain that has strong associations with me or knows who I am or whatever, that's not here anymore.
Okay.
We have now regressed to a prior state in this person's life, and they're acting out of primal body shaking fear about whatever is happening right now that I just triggered.
Right.
Why did I trigger it? Oh, it's because I was going to make a phone call or because they're going to step away at the wrong time or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not about me. It's about the stories we have inside. And so this person is level 11 activation, and I'm like, here's my chance. I mean, it's not just my chance, it's my responsibility. I literally teach people how to do this.
Yeah.
I should be able to do it in this moment.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to do it in this moment. It's like 5 pillars of attachment: safety, attunement, support while dysregulated, zero shame, zero blame, express delight. This is fantastic. You're doing amazing. Autonomy. Do you want me here? Do you not want me here? I mean, there's a lot of various things we can do within this framework, but it's the 5 pillars of attachment. And it's like, I am here with you as long as you want me here with you.
Right.
and I will not leave you, and I will not shy away from this intensity that's coming at me. And I see you, and I see that you're terrified, and that's okay. There's no shame, no wrongness in this. And doing the 5 pillars of attachment, and I'm actively looking for expressions of her trauma bubble, her trauma memory.
Yeah.
And there they are.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe I'm projecting, maybe I'm insane too, right? Anyway, there they are. And then it's just like, and then we go through the whole process, and it takes, hour and a half. I mean, it's generally, when you're hyperactivated, it's about 45 minutes, but that's only if you don't have further stimulus. But when you're in a level 11 event, it's like the stories are spinning, and you don't get to come back down immediately, right? You have to believe that you're safe. And so you have to create this situation where she believes she's safe. I mean, we're talking things like, I could watch the pupils of the eyes fluctuate in their dilation, and I'm like, I don't know the exact mechanism, but I know that that's a thing, right? And I'm like, and she doesn't recognize me, or she's struggling to recognize me, or she's saying my face looks different. Like, okay, so we need to maximize light in the room so that her eyes are getting lots of light, because low light situation is associated with threat. So when we need to increase light in the room, I need to change my proximity. I need to change the modulation of my voice. So all these things are, it's like dealing with an animal.
Right. Yeah.
And so you do all these things to create a sense of safety, and then you're watching, maintaining the 5 pillars of attachment, and you keep, the gold medal you're going for is the place where they feel safe.
Yeah.
So you're doing all these other things to get to the place where they feel safe.
Yeah.
And then they feel safe, and then it begins coming down. And then, and it's almost like the storm has passed. And then there's this like period afterwards of confusion. What just happened? Where am I? What's going on? Like, what did, and again, the brain is in a maximized state of learning because of all that adrenaline, right? And so now what happens, I've actually never said this, I've never talked about it this way before. Then what happens is, I just went to this terrifying place, and now I'm back, and I'm safe, and I survived. And this person is here with me, and they didn't shy away. They didn't blame me. They didn't, this person is now safer. Right? And now, what was in that, when I was in a level 11 event, what was happening? What memories were coming up? What emotions were coming up? And there's me on the other side of the room guiding them through these questions. What did that feel like for you? What memories? If I ask you, if you think about any memory from your childhood right now, what comes up? Because you're going for which memories are closest to the surface, right? Yeah. Understanding how memory works is amazing for this stuff. And so doing that, and then she starts sharing some stories from the childhood. And then I frequently say this in the class, it's like a Indiana Jones style lock, just goes cling, and then the doors open up, and then there's this memory in there that was previously inaccessible.
Right.
And she's just like, oh yeah, oh my God. And I'm, afterwards we integrate for a while, but afterwards I'm just like, do you remember that event before now? And she's like, no, I never even. And then we do a couple of checks and balances to make sure it's not a projected memory. It's not a manufactured memory. I mean, all memories are manufactured, but the idea, it's not a falsified memory. And I'm very close. I mean, I'm very careful around that. Like, anytime someone is dredging up a memory that was previously inaccessible, you got to be very delicate around that, so that you're not feeding, that whole kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you got to, kind of keeping some space, trying to ask questions that are not loaded, not leading. And it was just loads of details, details about where she was, the colors that she saw at the time, who was present, which portion of this person that was from Africa, which portion of Africa she was in, which compound it was. Like, loads of details came with the memory. And I'm just like, that ain't me. None of these things are me feeding into this memory. That's coming from inside her. Maybe it's accurate, maybe it's not. I'm going to guess it is, based upon what happens in this, and then what happens next. And what happens next is, a couple months later, there's an activation on the same topic, but it's not 11. It's not a level 11 event anymore. It's like a level 7 event. And then we go through the whole process again, which is way, way easier, because I've already established safety, and we've established one pathway through this. and et cetera, et cetera. And then she comes back down. It's less intensity, shorter duration. And she knows she's already made the connection because that memory was now accessible. It's partially integrated into the narrative system. And it's like, oh, I know what this is about. Like, this is that fear that I have activating again. Wow, guess what? That person just did self-soothing and trauma healing on their own without any help from me. Okay, then what happens? A few months later, similar topic arises, similar trigger arises. And this time, it's like a level 3 event. To the point where she's like, I'm being untriggered on that same thing again. I need to go on a walk and process my own stuff. It's not dysregulating. I mean, not massively. Definitely not destabilizing. In the process of practicing her autonomy, and she goes off to do this in her own way. She's getting her autonomy. She's getting her, like, that objectified thing isn't there. She feels safe. Safe within reason. And it's like, and that whole process builds her own inner trust with her inner child. So now she's building trust with her inner child. She's regulating, practicing her own tools within her own scope to get to a point of regulation, inner trust, like, and then I mean, I don't know what happened after that. I mean, I can't recall another event when that same topic came up in the same triggering way. There was a different one. I mean, there's others, but that's the thing, is that there's multiple memories in there. And so you kind of got to chew up each one separately. But that's a quick example of kind of how I've seen this process work, is that if you can afford the time and the intention and the attention and intention, and you've got a skilled facilitator or something for the first couple of rounds, I've literally just watched it happen. I've just watched trauma just like go bing, bing, bing. And then it's this kind of low level thing. And I'm still in touch with that person, and her life is different. Like I've seen her now navigate things that are completely unrelated to that one. Like the topic is a completely different topic. And it's still triggering, but I watch the way that she navigates the whole process. Fundamentally different than the previous 3 years that I've known her. Right? And it does not take that much time. 3 or 4 months.
You know what's coming up in my head is I'm thinking about The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
Where they finally make it into the castle. And then there's that huge hologram that's like scary. Remember the scarecrow's like shaking. And then Toto goes over there and just like pulls back the curtain.
Yeah.
Remember? And they just see like this little man pushing the buttons. And they're like, oh, that wasn't
yes.
That's scary, but that was just the sky. You know, and they're like, what are you doing? You know, so maybe the work is like, or the therapist is like Toto pulling back that curtain.
Yeah.
And so, this huge 11 is now like, oh, it's a 3.
Yeah, but it's not, I mean, yes and no, in the sense, I actually think the Wizard of Oz, I look back at it now and I think that was written by someone that is at least had some kind of exposure to some kind of healing process like this because of that scene, and several others. But like, there's 2 minds in there. And if the hijack button has been pressed, that is a different mind. That is a different me. And I can't control that one. You cannot outwill the subconscious. The subconscious is what's actually driving the bus. This thing that we have that's a conscious mind is, I believe that's an evolutionary offshoot that gives us certain survival advantages. But isn't... Yeah, it is. I believe we've got the big master driver that's doing all the stuff and scanning all the sensory data and making the heartbeat and the blood, hormone fluctuations. Like, that's the real driver. And then we've got this sidecar where the conscious mind lives. And what the conscious mind is really good at is predictive modeling. And again, from Jim Hopper, whoops, again from Jim Hopper, and I love this line. In the world of nature, he who can more accurately predict the future wins every time. And that's exactly what it's about. And when you really get down to it, that's what trauma is. That's what trauma is all about. Trauma is about developing a lightning fast mechanism inside this system that looks back at the past and tries to accurately predict the future and then prepare the system for lightning fast reaction to the threat that's about to come. That's it. And so we have this evolutionary sidecar, which is the conscious mind, that has these amazing predictive modeling skills. And then that's what it's doing, is that it's racing back and forth, being like, here's data out in the real world, or whatever. It's not even the real world. It's here's sensory information, sensory stimulus that's coming in, and I'm comparing it to past patterns rapidly across majorly large data sets. I think sometimes I try to think about those data sets, and I'm just like, I mean, I even work with computers all the time and do stuff with big numbers, and I'm thinking about the sheer amount of data that the human brain is processing in any given second is just like, wow, it's astonishing. For an organic system, yeah. Anyway, so we've got all these events that have happened in the past, right? All those events have patterns to them. This happened, then this happened, then this happened, right? Like the wind blew, the curtain turned, the vase started teetering, hits the ground, there's a loud noise, stuff everywhere, I cut my foot, right? So there's this pattern to those events, okay? So we've got all these vast numbers of experiences in our memory set that have been basically reduced down to what was the pattern that reached a point where it impacted our safety. That's it. It's not a detailed analysis of it. There's no, it's not even cause and effect relationship. It is these things happen at the same time and our safety was put in risk. That's it. And so now we've got millions and millions and millions of these. And then we've got a system, which is probably the amygdala, which is scanning all internal data sets, or I mean, all incoming stimulus, looking for anything that matches a pattern that we've already have. That's it. And then as soon as it sees one, it's like, I see that pattern. I have this pattern. That pattern led to a place where we were profoundly unsafe. Prep the entire system to be ready for that one. And then it happens a couple seconds later. And then our entire system is mobilized. And then we can act. And to me, that's how it works. And when you can look at it in those terms, suddenly I understand myself better. I've got more self-compassion. I understand others better. This whole thing we were talking about narcissists earlier, it's like, oh, that suddenly makes more sense. Like literally every possible thing that I can think about between two people suddenly makes more sense when I'm in this place where I'm like, it's a pattern matching, it's a very, very fast, large data set pattern matching system looking for threat. They saw something that is associated with some previous sense of threat that they have. And now their system is mobilized to act quickly and in large, in gratuitous measure. And that's what being triggered is. So it's like, okay, well, how do we fix the system? How do we fix it? How do we integrate it? How do we heal trauma? How do we help these people? How do I help myself? It's like, oh, once I look at it through those terms, it's like you've got many, many systems inside, or memories, experiences, patterns. You've got many registered patterns. They're all kind of sitting on top of each other and intermingled and interlayered. And that's why people look at the human behavior and say, oh, it's so confusing or it's ineffable or whatever. It's like, no, it's not. It's just, this is what happens when you take many splotches and drop them on top of each other. It becomes this kind of, it looks like a chaotic mess. But when you can extract one, turns out every one of these events has almost a singular point, a singular experience, a singular emotion that you can focus on that will remove that splotch. And it's like, even if they are connected, you just handle one at a time. And like, whoa, okay. Well, if that's true, then we can go in and we can say, and say, let's go find a splotch. And then we're going to focus on that one splotch, this one trauma memory. We're going to focus on that for now. And we're going to say, this is it. This is the purpose of my life. This is my singular focus in life right now, is to find and understand this one place where I get triggered. Understand it and try to integrate it. Deal with emotions, release what needs to be released, process the memories, chop them up, get them integrated in narrative memory system, and then watch the trauma go away and be like, wow. And be like, I do feel better. And you're like, I feel better, and I feel like I have agency and power because I just did all that. So now, again, earlier we were talking about like healing or feeling good is not the metric you want to use for what is healing. So because if I go straight for the feel good, then I lose the opportunity to build my skills to face the fear. This is building the skills to face the fear. And then I go through it once. Let's just say back to the therapeutic relationship, I help someone go through it once, and they're a little bit confused, and so it's like a kid learning to drive. You're kind of helping point out all the details, where the potholes are, all that kind of stuff. Then you help them go through it on something that's not connected, some other thing, and then you realize that the process is very similar or identical. The resolution is very similar or identical. Like the way you approach it is similar or identical. So then they're like, wait, I can do this on my own. You're like, yes, you can. And then I lose them as a patient, and then my bank account reflects that. But it's okay. Yeah, but that's it. For me, it's just like trauma is the only reason I came to this. I mean, I feel like I need to stress this, and I don't know how to say it, but it's like, from all the studies I've done, spiritual and psychological and technical, like this is the most gold I've ever found. Okay, I'm just one person, right? Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, right? But I've gone out in the field and I've been testing it, and it's like the success rate is astonishingly high. Okay, so that's helpful. But there's everyone's talking about trauma these days. And the only reason that I was able to get to this place is because I was able to just say, wait a second, what if everything I've learned about trauma is not accurate? What if it's like love or these words that people throw around and they don't really have a specific meaning? Earlier we were talking about self-love, right? What if it's like self-love, that they're just saying, oh, well, you need more self-love in your life, but they can't tell me how to get there. What if they say, oh, you need to heal your trauma, and like, what even is trauma? And they're like, la, 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 la. Right? Gabor Mate is famous for saying it's something that should have happened but didn't, or something that shouldn't have happened but did. It's like, okay, that's cool and pithy, but it doesn't help me in my moment where I'm at an 11 and I'm, stuck halfway up a mountain. Like, that's not helping me. So for me, I guess I'd say that like a big aha moment or a releasing or freeing, I don't know. It's like, we'll just say this is the moment that like the speed of this really took off, was the moment they said, what if everything I learned about trauma is just a little bit wibbly wobbly, and it's something more specific? What if I'm able to let go of everything I've been taught and say what makes sense based upon what I see and what I've learned? And that's where I came to where I am. And it's like, and it's only because I was able to stop for a second and let go of the past. Not to say that therapists in the history of psychology, and I mean, I stand upon the shoulders of many of these giants, but it's like there is a thing, again, coming in from the outside and saying, okay, I'm going to learn about all this stuff, and you're all telling me this thing, and I'm like, but wait a second, these things aren't lining up. What happens if I let go of what you taught me and synthesize a new idea? And that's where this came up. And then it's like, okay, well, now it's a theory, let's go test it. And I've been testing it, and it's been very, very durable. So, I mean, we've talked about this a bit, and I mean, it's just a couple of weeks ago. What's your thoughts
on trauma or everything?
Yeah, on any of this stuff.
Well, we have a similar story where I've been stuck and kind of repeating a lot of the same patterns in relationships, And I think a fascination with psychology and self-development sort of led me into studying narcissism. And I think the last few years I've almost like given up on like finding like a solution or the solution, but having enough framework to kind of quickly understand your ideas, it makes a lot of sense in terms of getting triggered and why I'm getting triggered. And so I'm really interested. I'm actually fascinated to see what I'm avoiding, because I know I don't feel like I'm avoiding it. But if I look at how I've been living and how I've been feeling, clearly there's some things I'm either unaware of or unable to tap into. And so I'm quite fascinated to start that journey and see what's there that can be integrated. And because I often find myself in quite an anxious state, and now I'm even more and more aware of. I'm like, wow, I'm at a 10 right now before I go to bed. What's going on? So there's the idea of kind of having like a map. A lot of what you're telling me, I feel like, oh, this is kind of like a real map rather than like, just clues.
Yes.
Yeah. I feel like I've gotten like a lot of clues, and I'm like, oh, I know that's accurate, but that's not helping me move much.
Right. Where do I go next?
Yeah. So the simplicity of it and how actionable and empowering it is has me like very, very interested.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
When was the last time you got super angry?
About a week or two ago. Oh, about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know about super, but I got angry for sure.
Yeah. Do you know what it was about? Do you know why?
Well, a girl choosing another guy over me.
Oh,
yeah.
Good summary. Yeah. Yeah. That's frequently an activating one.
Yeah, but a few weeks before that, or maybe 2 months ago, I was at dinner with two good friends, and I was in the middle of a story that I thought was fairly interesting. But in Bali, the waitresses, when they come, they don't wait for you to.
Yeah.
They just
this must go there.
Yeah. And so that happened, and then my friends kind of like the conversation kind of shifted, and I felt like my story wasn't interesting, and I was a little bit afraid to like bring up like, hey guys, we got interrupted, let me finish my story. And I had like this outburst with like a cuss word that was just like, what? I didn't directly at my friend, but it was like I said it, and then I think I owned it. I was like, actually, I'm feeling like like I wasn't being heard, and I'm not that interesting, and all this.
But
it was quite. It was like a real, like example of the kid hitting the button.
Hijack. Blam.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool that you were able to recognize it and then bring it back to the point where you're just like, oh yeah, this is what I was feeling.
Yeah.
Like that's super, super good. That's
well, I still don't understand exactly what was. I think I need to do more work to understand. Well, I have the idea, but I'm sure it's more profound. Yeah. Or maybe more.
So it's like I'm telling this story and I feel good about telling the story. What feels good about telling the story? Why do I feel good in this moment? Yeah. Like here's these people paying attention to me. It's like I'm the center of attention. Are there other times I'm the center of attention? Do those feel good? Yeah. And it's like, and now something that I can't control just showed up and changed the dynamic. And then, I'm working towards this punchline, or I've got this goal, or I'm feeling good about the finale. And then they just robbed it of me, and now I can't do the finale. Now it's going to be all super awkward if I try it's lost. And yeah.
I think it's my best guess is just feeling like like not good enough, but that's very vague.
Yeah, it's also very cognitive. Yeah, I mean it's true. It's like we can go to these core wounds and just say like, oh, that's my I'm not good enough, or this is my I'm unlovable wound, or whatever. That's kind of like what Thais Gibson does in that whole community. But it's like I find that is it's good as a shorthand to kind of be like, that's the topic, but it's like, I feel like the emotional work it bears more fruit.
Yeah.
Just be like, can I go back to that feeling?
Yeah.
Can I create a vision in my mind where I can manufacture that feeling? I can provoke myself on purpose.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful skill.
Yeah.
And I mean, I say sometimes about how it's like, if we look at information or well, it's information comes in that then activates the nervous system. Okay, so then the nervous system is activating, right? Which means the amygdala has detected some pattern in the incoming data that it finds threatening, and it's beginning to mobilize the system. So it's mobilizing, activating the system, and there's always a little bit of latent stuff, but there's kind of this line that it crosses, and when it crosses that line, it's stressful.
Yeah.
Like, I am activated, I'm stressed, right? Not overwhelmed, stressed. And then we're familiar with that one, but there's this other line, which is like, it keeps going up, and it's when you cross that other line, that's when we get hijacked. That's when I call that the point of overwhelm.
Right.
If I'm in a state of overwhelm, my nervous system's activated so high that I've crossed some arbitrary line that is literally my resilience.
Yeah.
All these people talking about resilience now. And so if I have low resilience, or we train children to have low resilience, or anyone to have low resilience, that line comes down. And now my line of threshold for being overwhelmed is now lower. It's not higher.
Okay.
It's lower. I have less capacity for stress.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Well, when you cross the line of overwhelm, this is getting into my whole thing about trauma. When you cross the line of overwhelm, there are neurological changes that happen inside the brain. And one of them is that it goes to the place that stores memories, the hippocampus, and it changes the way that operates. Kind of says encode more stuff, and so you end up with bigger memory blobs. But there's something else that happens in the prefrontal cortex, which is kind of like our higher brain functions, and it massively decreases the capacity of the prefrontal cortex. I think it's Dan Siegel. I think he's the one that came up with the term state-based cognition. And it's this idea that, like, as emotional activation rises, your cognitive abilities decrease. And they've actually tested this in people where they've got a 140 IQ, which I think is genius. I don't remember. I don't pay attention. Anyway, whatever, 140 IQ. And then they basically show them a bunch of pictures, of horrific things, and they get them super emotionally activated. And then they immediately make them take an IQ test, and they scored 90 or 97 or something. And so it's like, true story, bro. And so, okay, so now let's take that story, and we're going to jump into a bunch of high school kids where everything's new. They got hormones raging. They're trying to figure out where, they're literally every aspect of their inner child subconscious mind is saying, F you and your math. What matters for survival is social connection.
Yeah.
And then we've got all the systems in place for these kids that are basically being like, no, you can't hang out with your friends. You got to come do this thing. You got to be responsible. You got to grow up, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. All these things are being interpreted as threats to the system. And then what happens? Their cognition drops. And then they're super activated, and you're interacting with them as an adult or community member or teacher, or principal, whatever. And you're dealing with a kid that's basically super triggered, which means his cognition is way, way down. Yeah. Hijack button is flaring. Yeah. Right? And then it's just like, and we think we can teach that kid something? Right. It's like literally the part of his brain that learns is, well, yeah, we are teaching him. Yeah. We just talked about that. It's like the adrenaline is high. Things are being learned quicker than normal. They're going to sleep. This stuff's going to be encoded in long-term memory. What are we teaching them? We're teaching them that this environment is not safe. Yeah. That I don't care about you. I care about the plans or the system or the regulations or the whatever. Yeah. That is being objectified. Yeah. Right? So you're not safe, and you're being objectified, and guess what? You can't leave. Right. Perception of inescapability. Right. And we wonder why kids get through this process super traumatized. Right. No, it makes sense. Yeah. And then what happens? We date them. Right? Or we are them, and then we date other ones. Right. That are, and it's like, and at no point in time is the society or culture or whatever trying to like untangle this mess that's been created. I'm not saying public school is wrong. No, I'm just saying that it's like there are dynamics at play. Again, I don't believe in shame. There are dynamics at play. The better informed we get about what these dynamics are and how they operate empowers us all. And that's really what I want to get at. I'm like, if we can create 1,000, if we can find 1,000 new parents and teach them everything about this, and those 1,000 parents basically create a 36-month window, which is 3 years, of it's not trauma free. It's really weird. It is trauma free, but it's like trauma has multiple meanings there. It's like, I'm going to say it becomes trauma, what everyone else is calling trauma, when it's codified into long-term memory. So you can have a traumatic event, but if it's integrated in that window before the sleep cycle, and you basically, again, adrenaline's high, you've got maximized learning potential. They're learning in the moment that they're triggered, they're learning this is unsafe. And so what we have to do is we have to put new lessons in that same space. That it's like, no, you are safe and you are attuned to and you are supported and there is no shame and we're expressing delight for you and you have autonomy and you're not objectified. And, if we can bathe that period of time after the traumatic event in the 5 pillars of attachment, which are the opposite of the traumatic events or traumatic traits, then that child learns. What did they learn? Instead of learning this terrifying thing happened and I'm unsafe and I'm unsafe in the world and nobody's got me and I'm objectified, instead of learning that, they're saying, oh, this horrific thing happened, but I'm still good. And it's like, not only am I good, but like all these good things happened. Right. And now I'm stronger and my resilience goes up and I have more trust in myself and I have more trust in my caregivers and all the things go upward. Right. So if we can get 1,000 families, parents, and they basically understand this stuff in like deep inside, and then they can say, and they create a 36-month window where we maximize integration in that post-traumatic event before sleep, after the stressful event and before sleep, and all that kind of stuff. You end up with however many children, 1,000 children or more, that are basically have escaped that window with a secure attachment system. And that is a powerful thing. I say often that's the greatest gift we can give another human being. And so now those children will walk through life and they will have a different experience. Like I every once in a while I interact with someone that has a secure attachment style. I'm like, your life is different. Like everything, like the way you think, the way you conflict resolve, the way you approach love, the way you do boundaries, like what you dream about, everything is different. Like, okay, so now we give that to 1,000 kids or 2,000 kids and they eventually grow up and they're touching all these lives along the way, right? They're taking what they know, this intrinsic felt understanding of self-knowledge, self-awareness, self-love, and trust in the universe, and they're trickling that out to every person they touch along the way, and then they have children, right? And then they bring their knowledge. Well, first off, they're going to pick, because they have a secure, they're not going to pick a train wreck. Right. They're only going to choose someone that's going to match them. Yeah. So now you've got a super solid, right? And they're going to take everything they know and that's going to pass into their children, and then it grows from there. Yeah. And then we have this ripple in the pond thing that's just growing. And of course, hopefully, if this catches the way that I believe it will, it's going to be way more than 1,000. 1,000 is just the first group, and then it's going to be more as we go, and then you end up with a population that is very, very different. Different electorate, different consumer, different psychologists, different teachers, different students. Everything's different. And then, I kind of got off the point. I was asking you about where you got angry, but it's somehow we got onto that. But So when was the last time you got super afraid of something?
Super afraid of something. I mean, part of me wants to say all the time.
That's a fair answer.
Yeah.
Okay. What does it feel like?
It feels, I don't know. I guess it just, you mean like a body sensation or whatever?
Whatever those words evoke inside you.
It feels I don't know about sad, but I don't want to say terrifying. That's a little too strong.
That's
but
okay.
yeah, like maybe like 65% of terrifying.
The terrifying meter turned up to 65.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like maybe helpless or
Trapped.
trapped.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is this idea of kind of wanting to move towards certain goals I think I need to move towards, and or be more of what I need to be, and just
Yeah.
kind of watching months go by and
Oh yeah.
feeling like okay, I didn't do it that month. Okay, so that was a year ago. You
Yep.
know? Or like,
Yep.
okay, that was 5 years.
Yeah.
So this might not happen. So now what?
Right.
Yeah. So it's a lot of, I think it stems from a lot of this stuff. Yeah.
So questions asked there, like, who gave me that idea?
Yeah. I almost want to say America.
Yeah. Damn you, America. What's your numbing
Yeah.
agents?
Thankfully, it's not sugar anymore.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Lucky you.
Well, it's been actually slightly,
Hmm.
but yeah, long story. But normally I can stay away from sugar. I think porn is the top one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's just so it's right there.
It's right there.
Whenever
easy,
you,
super
just-
massive chemical whoosh, and then away it goes.
and it's easy to rationalize from being a somewhat sex positive person. It's
Yep.
like, no, this is the human body's beautiful.
Yep. Yep.
It's and in a way I still kind of believe in it can be used in a healthy way.
Oh, 100.
And
yeah.
be like,
Yeah.
a good thing, but compulsively it's
Yeah.
Thankfully I'm not a workaholic. Maybe I used to be, but yeah, maybe just socializing, just like calling a friend, hey, let's go
Right.
grab a smoothie.
Right.
Just get away from
Get
being
away.
alone.
Yeah. Out of the house. Do something
Yeah.
not alone.
Yeah.
So if you're super dysregulated, like really angry or scared, well, okay? So you're saying you're scared all the time, right? Okay, then that's it. That fits. So you've got this 65% of terror, right, running all the time, and then your system is like, well, how can I get out of this? How can I? And it's like, and it feels better if you've got another person there, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Totally. Yep. And then, so they would describe that as the anxious attachment style. And it's like, so when I'm in close proximity, it's not even proximity, it's emotional proximity. So I'm in close connection with someone, it feels safe. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then the system starts pushing all these chemicals around. Valence is the word they use for emotions, is like positive or negative valence. It basically means positive valence is a good emotion and negative valence is a bad emotion. But they say valence because it's really just a direction. And so positive valence, positive emotions just motivate us to move towards the thing, and negative emotions motivate us to move away from the thing. Okay. That's it. And so then what happens is you realize you've got this consistent pattern of positive emotions that arise that motivate me to move towards connection with the person. Okay. Regardless of how good they are for us. Right. Yeah. And then if it's something where I'm solitary, or I've been alone too long, or I have felt like I don't have connection, I'm going to start getting a building sense of anxiety. Okay. Right? Yeah. And so, a negative valence emotion, which means a negative emotion, which would be fear or anger or disgust or fear. Yeah. And so you get this sense of looking at it through this lens, you end up at this place where you say, oh yeah, my needs for a connection, well, we're going to say needs in quotes, my desire for a connection of my inner child is so strong that he's basically turning up the negative noise most of the time because he wants it constantly. And so that's why I feel negative valence emotions so frequently. And this is why I go pursue connection, anything that's like playing paddle,
Yeah.
interviews like this, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, so I can exploit this to my advantage by, hey man, let's do another interview. And you're like, yes.
I'm like, I'm just home alone.
Crying. So, yeah, but I mean, yeah, so the system will motivate you to seek out connection frequently. And then it's going to give you a bunch of negative emotions when it's not getting enough, right? But how much is enough? Right? And so that's where the inner child reparenting, where it comes in, is to say the degree of hunger, because I got this whole thing about we're born with an instinctive need to be wanted, chosen, and prioritized. And this is where the 5 pillars of attachment come in. And when you get the 5 pillars, it gives you the sense of being wanted, chosen, and prioritized but when we're born, it's from an external entity, the primary attachment figure, right? But when we don't get enough, we end up with a hunger, craving, longing for that thing we don't have enough of. We don't have the connection, we don't have the validation, we don't have the expressed delight, whichever. And then something about that arrests. And it's like it stops in the developmental cycle, or at least slows down. And so now we're in this place where it's like the inner child concludes, I have a hunger, craving, longing for emotional connection, because when emotional connection is there, I feel safe. I need to go get it from an outside person because that's the way it was. That's the way it is. Right. And so what we have to do is we have to create an environment and kind of a practice, 6 months probably, of kind of re-educating, reparenting the inner child to say, you can get that from me. I have to prove to you. So I've got this, 5-year-old child sitting in my lap or across the table from me. And this child's been abandoned and neglected and, whatever, ignored for years, decades maybe. And now I show up and I'm like, we're going to have a relationship now. And he's like, F off. Like, I don't believe you. I don't trust you. You've done nothing to protect me over the past 20 years. Why should I believe you now? Okay, so that means I got to earn it. So I have to take, and oddly enough, coming back to the self-love question, this is my answer to self-love. This is what self-love is. Stepping in intentionally and trying to build the relationship with that child that sits right there. It's a 5-year-old version of me sitting right there. He's been abandoned, alone, misused, suppressed, objectified, definitely can't escape. Right? And so I say, I have to intentionally go step into that relationship with a 5-year-old emotional child that does not trust me. And I have to earn his fucking trust. And get him to the point where like first, I just have to establish enough trust that he'll even communicate with me. Because when I started, he wouldn't even communicate with me. It was just this big empty void. Because he was just like, why should I say anything to you? You won't pay attention to me. So first, you just got to get to the point where you build enough trust, he'll start communicating, which means he'll start sending more emotions your way because he can't use language. He doesn't have access to language. So he'll throw more, and then that's when we have these emotions that start unlocking the doorway. That's the being like, I trust you well enough that I'm going to give you this emotion now. I'm going to give you this memory. I've been protecting you by keeping it locked off. And now you've created a sense of safety well enough that I'm willing to share it with you now. So this is where a lot of people say it feels like it gets worse before it gets better. This is why, is because all the stuff that's locked up will then start unveiling. And then you got to go through all that. Okay, so you go through all that. And then if you can hold that space, no shame, no blame, continual sense of safety, welcome, express delight, support for dysregulation, attunement, all those things. If you can do that with that child consistently, he starts to say like, oh, I trust you. I'm beginning to trust you. And then when you do that and you say, I know that you want to turn me off. I know you want to hit that hijack button and shut me down so you can go get your safety from that girl over there. I said, but we know where that goes. And now that I've established a sense of trust, maybe he'll listen to me. And then I say, okay, like, And if you're doing this consistently, he begins to feel wanted, chosen, and prioritized by me. And as long as that's happening, and there's trust and safety and all that stuff, he'll start to be like, oh, I don't need to fiddle with this emotional control panel anymore. I don't have to fill you with negative hormone or negative valence emotions. I don't push those buttons anymore, trying to motivate you to go get attention. Like I don't need to do that anymore because I actually feel okay. And I'm not gonna push the big euphoria buttons when you do get close to someone, because it's like it's not such a big deal anymore because I have it most of the time. So this is why euphoria is a trauma response in that. It's that like when I'm lacking in self-connection, when the inner child gets someone that will actually pay attention to him and feels safe, like the euphoria goes off the charts. And so this is the thing we need to do to reparent, which is, in my world, the self-love. And then when that happens, codependency decreases, looping all the way back around. The self-love deficiency syndrome gets addressed. My codependent behavior patterns begin to go away. My people-pleasing goes away. The valence of my emotions changes. And then I drop into this place of calm. And as I drop into the place of calm, then what happens is that you're just like, oh my God, like literally all these decisions I've been making in regards to relationships, all these decisions I've been making my entire life have been motivated by this hunger, this incessant craving. And now that craving has reduced or the hunger's been satiated, now I can start making decisions based upon my true needs, desires, goals, and life purpose. And you realize, like, I've literally been picking people my entire life that have no alignment with my bigger goals in life. And why was I picking them? I was picking them because they were offering emotional connection and validation. So it's just like, wow. And again, looping around, I'm liking this. Like I don't think I've looped back around so many times ever. Like, back to the point of bringing people to a place of agency. This is agency. You have control. I have control. We all have control. If I step into that place and I can build this relationship with my inner child, and then my self-love goes up, self-love goes up. But anyway, whatever, this relationship improves, and then my entire emotional landscape changes. And now I have like literally reprogrammed my inner belief system, and then my life changes and all my relationships change. And it's just like, and I'm now choosing different partners. And it's like, oh my God, like literally I've seen this happen to so many people, and it's like their life changes. And it like at no point in there was pointing the finger and being like, that damn narcissist is the cause of all my pain. Like that doesn't help anything. Like it gives you, it literally, the victim card blocks you from the place where you want to go. But it's so seductive. Wow, it's so seductive. So you put down the victim card, you get really tuned to that and say like, okay, I'm victim carding again. And you get better and better at kind of inhibiting yourself from doing that. And you do this other work, and then you start to see this new world, this new possibility, this new life that you could be living. And you're just like, wow, I've been doing it wrong this whole time. But then you're just like, wow, how cool does it go from there? And it does. It gets very, very cool. But relationships change. I can't deny that. Yeah, I can't deny that at all. Like relationships change. The very nature of the relationship changes, because the thing that was driving us towards relationships in the past, which is this like big chemical roller coaster, and the euphoria and the crashes and the drama and the excitement and the sex drive and all that kind of stuff, all that stuff gets muted, which for a lot of people, this will not be the path for them because they're not ready to take that step. They want to stay on the emotional roller coaster. Okay, fine, do that. Just don't have children. Do not have children. Definitely don't have children thinking that they're going to save the relationship or give me someone to play with or any of that other. Like, but the people who are addicted to the emotional roller coaster, okay, fine. But like getting off the emotional roller coaster is calm It brings a new definition of love that is probably something you've never experienced before. So it's very hard to describe. And it creates an environment where the relationship has a chance to thrive and grow. And then you can both be this mutually nurturing, supporting. I mean, it's like you both have this like upward energy while still being like very grounded. And on top of all that, it's like, okay, now partner disappears. Like they can't be with me anymore, or they pass away, or they just decide they're not interested, or they have an affair, blah, 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 whatever. And you're just like, okay. It's like it's 5-year-old child doing the things a 5-year-old child does. And it's like, maybe it was premeditated, maybe it wasn't. It's not about them. It's like, if that takes me off my center, that's my business. Why? What is so horrifically bad about this event that my center is shaken, my stability is shaken? And it's like, if my stability can be shaken by someone pursuing their own pleasure/survival needs, I'm too dependent. I was too dependent. Like, I want to be in a place where I choose you. Hopefully you choose me too. We grow together and we just have all this joyous stuff together. And at the point that we're no longer in alignment, you could just say, we're no longer in alignment. Have a nice day. like, you know, all the pain beyond that is we can avoid all that. We can, and not avoid it in the sense of like checking out or whatever, numbing or that kind of stuff. It's not that. It's like prevent it might be a better word. We can just get to the point where it's like the pain just doesn't even come up because I'm so deliciously satisfied with myself and who I am and where I am in this world. And it's like, and it all comes to that connection that there's this child, there's this 5-year-old child. And I mean, I'll be honest, like I don't pay attention to him every day anymore. Like I don't, every once in a while he makes himself known. And it's like, oh man, I've been neglecting you. I'm sorry. Like I've been busy with work and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, okay, let's spend a little time together. And we do. And he knows. And it's like in that he's satisfied. It's like, he knows that as soon as he made a peep, he had my attention and I dropped other things, which made him feel wanted, chosen, and prioritized. Right. And so in putting down other things in order to pursue this relationship, he feels wanted, chosen, and prioritized. And that changes the way he interacts with his emotional control panel. But if I keep saying, no, shut up, go sit in the corner, I'm not ready for you, or I don't want to deal with this, I'm going to go to this, the static dance, tantra, blah, 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 whatever, and get all this yummy, whatever from external sources, that burns us in the end. It loops back around to that child being like, you're prioritizing other people over me. I don't feel wanted, chosen, prioritized, and I'm going to let you know. Bloop, bloop, bloop. Starts hitting that control panel with all sorts of difficult emotional combinations. That's, to me, that's simplicity, and it's beautiful, and it explains the system so well, and yeah.
Well, what would you say to someone who says, well, I like that idea, but I would feel selfish if I lived that way?
Yeah, who put that into your head? Like, who put that idea in your head that's selfish? What does selfish even mean? Right? It's like, okay. I mean, people use the airplane one all the time that, you put the gas mask on your oxygen on your face before you do your child. Okay, sure. That one's been used to death, but we can think of it more like I live in a broken down shack made of roofing tiles and mud. And that's all, my house is in ruin all the time because I put all my energy into going to the neighbors and, putting energy into other people's places. And and then I go home and I'm spent and I got rain dripping on my head when I'm trying to sleep and all that kind of stuff. It's just like, I've literally created an environment where I live that taxes my system, that creates a sense of stress and unsafety. And now I am depleted. Sound like Americans? Sounds like so many Westerners. Okay, now on the flip side, you say, I'm going to build a house, maybe a mansion if I've got access for it. But I'm going to build a really solid place where I can feel safe and secure and nurtured. And there's food in the garden. And there is, a place where I can watch the sunrise or sunset or whatever. Like, things that nurture me that like I enjoy.
Yeah.
And so when I go home to my home, it's a place where it's like I get a rest. I get a release and discharge whatever charges I have. And it's a place where I'll be welcome and safe, and there's a nurturing environment there. There's someone always there. Like I walk through the door, there's someone always there happy to see me.
Yeah.
Like, and it's like now I go home, I get my little home time. I'm recharged. My stress is decreased. My sense of threat is decreased. My nervous system calms and regulates. And now I step out of that space and I have capacity for so much more. Right? Who's being selfish?
Right. Yeah.
Right? I can now step into the world with a degree of meaning and purpose and passion and capacity and regulated stability that I've never ever had before.
Right.
And that allows me to help the world. That allows me to like hold space like a boss. I couldn't do that when I was taxed. I couldn't do that when I was stressed out, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so then you say, okay, well then you got the guy who's like, no, I want to build a gigantic mansion and have 20 different houses and Rolls Royce. You can take that idea to an extreme.
Yeah.
The person becomes completely self-absorbed, and you're like, okay, that's not so great, but we need something more than specific than this. That's not great. Why? Why are you doing it? Why are you motivated to spend so much time building your own little inner world? And honestly, this is very apropos because I think I used that word right. Again, we're in this like healing mecca, this mecca for like alternate healing modalities and stuff. And one of the issues that's come up for me personally a lot in the past 6 months is that I'm struggling to be excited. I go to events and I'm struggling to be there, and I'm struggling to get the motivation to go to an event where there's all these other people. Because what I see is I see a bunch of people that are very selfish and self-absorbed. I see people like entitled white people most of the time that are basically wrapped up in their own little thing, right? And they're like, I'm so focused on my healing, and I'm so focused on this, and yeah, they're trying to build community, which is beautiful, and they have successfully built community, which is also beautiful, and they got music and dancing and food, and I love all these things, right? But it gets to this point where I'm just like, what are you doing with all this energy?
Yeah.
You're consuming massive amounts of resources and massive amounts of your own personal energy reserves. At what point are you releasing that outward to say, I'm going to make the world a better place? And then be like energy, blah, 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 right? No, I'm just like some person that is less fortunate than you, doesn't have resources or emotional capacity or whatever. What are you doing for them?
Right.
And guess what? We got Balinese everywhere that are living on pennies.
Yeah.
What are we doing for them?
Right.
Right? And I don't want that to be a shame message, but I do want it to be a actionable, uncomfortable, questioning message. And for me, that really shifted when I got my own house in order.
Yeah.
When I got my own house in order, I realized I had tremendous capacity. No one in this world is more surprised than me that I'm sitting here talking about childhood development. Like, I never thought I would have kids.
Yeah.
And here I am, and it's just like, and here I am, it's like I go work at the orphanage every week, and I mean, those kids are like deep in my heart. I love those kids to death.
Yeah.
That's a massive surprise to me. And it's like, and it happened because I got my own house in order, and then I have more capacity, and then I stepped into this place, and I'm like, I am stable and regulated, and I can hold this space, and I can separate like whatever emotional turbulence I have inside me. I've done all this work, so I'm now familiar with it, and I can recognize it early in the process, and I can regulate that so it doesn't come out over here. So the thing that I'm able to give those kids is presence and humor and investment and time and knowing a little bit about each one and having some inner jokes and blah, 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 right? And that just goes, and it's like, I look forward to that every week. And from what they write on their papers, so do they. And it's just like, that only happened because I got my own house in order. Yeah. So,
Oh, how should people reach you?
like, I've got a website. It's super primitive, but it's 2mindmethod.com. And then on all the socials, which is Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, I'm 2mindmethod. And that's me. And it's like, I'm pumping out shorts of my classes and stuff every day, a couple times a day. So Instagram's probably the one that's like the most pretty, best presentation. But I mean, you can go through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of reels that basically go over all this stuff. YouTube has the entire lectures, an hour and a half to 2 hours, many of them, not all of them yet, but many of them. TikTok's just a thing that it's like, it was part of the package. So I just do that too. Like I don't pay attention to it. Yeah. And then Facebook oddly Facebook's the surprise. Facebook has zero traffic. Like remember when Facebook used to be the big thing? And now it's like, and I'm still engaged in many, like if I'm engaged in a community, it's the Facebook community. Yeah. But it's on my thing, there's nobody there. Yeah. It's like they find me in other ways. But I do plan on building a better write-up of me and my history soon. And I also want to release I want to post a kind of a bibliography of like, I stand upon the shoulders of giants. If you like what you're seeing here, share this with 2 people. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. And it's like, that will do more for, that will do it. That will do it. Because my goal here is to create that situation where the next generation of children can escape that 36-month window without any trauma, any lasting trauma. And that to me is more important than money. So it's like, yes, I want enough money to survive and kind of grow the business and connect with more people and be available for more opportunities and stuff. But it's like, I'm not here for cash. I'm here for the purpose. Yeah. And that's, so the best, even more than throwing me some cash or putting a tip on the website or whatever, it's this thing about doing some action where you're telling the algorithm and the players that be that this is good content. I think more people should see it. Because if that happens, it's like, well, thank you so much.
Yeah, man, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you learn something?
Yeah, hell yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it was amazing.